I'm curious because I think it's so difficult to kind of change that identity, change that like core belief. How did you? Because I'm assuming you don't think that you're low value now. So how did you go about changing that?
Man, this is something I'm very passionate about. I did a video. I gotta retweet that because um, I did a really good video I was passionate about on that. But yeah, so I grew up with like social anxiety because I was like a fat kid. Some shit at home too. It was like I just didn't like feel like enough, and I like when you're a fat kid and you're kind of shy. People like to point out when you're a kid, like it's oh you're a shy kid or you're like that fat kid and shit like that, and you hear that enough times, and you just like condition yourself to like oh like maybe I am because you're getting this feedback, and then you hear it enough times and you're like oh I'm a fat kid or I'm this I'm worthless like what's my opinion worth, and you play that enough times and it's just like you identify with that. So I identified with that for many years, like probably like 11 years or like from the ages like 9 to like 22. um but yeah, so like it was something that like always bothered me, and at the age of like 13 I started going to the gym with my stepdad, and I started working working out, and I would like work out till I threw up at these like boot camp classes at the YMCA, and I fucking loved it. And because it's like I'm just like going hard, I'm like it's like I'm running away from this identity, and
Mm,
that's what it was for me. Like I'm like fuck this. I'm like putting my emotions into working out. Um, but yeah, like over time, I saw that I could because I know remember the first day like I noticed like physical changes like after a few months. I was like holy shit, like this stuff works. Like going to the gym and exercising works. It's
mm,
crazy. And it was really impactful because you're just like, okay, like if I can do this in this area, I wonder what else I can apply this to.
mm,
So if I can apply this to my physical body, I wonder if I can apply this to my mind. So that also took that took a lot more work is changing your beliefs around something. So long story short, like I slowly like worked my way towards the identity I wanted by just doing shit that made me uncomfortable. Like I didn't like go like, oh, I'm confident now. It's like no, um, I started small talk with cashiers. I initiated like, oh, hey, how's your day going? And that scared the shit out of me, but I kept doing it, and then eventually I got comfortable doing that. And then I took it a step further. I would what else? I would initiate, like, say, if I'm at a party, I would initiate saying hello to somebody and shake their hand. It's like, okay, that felt uncomfortable. Now it's like a lot easier. And then I would like go ask for like girls' numbers at a cafe and then at the gym and shit like that. That is still uncomfortable. I
mm,
fucking get nervous around like
yeah.
cold approaching one. Damn. But it's good. It's a good sign. So it's like taking those small steps. Um, Also, a big thing is stop identifying with your feelings. So I read this book called The Seven Pillars of Self Esteem. Never finished it. I read like a good quarter of it though. I got what I needed. Um, and in it, he talked about, um, I believe it was in that, stop identifying with your feelings. So like, if you're feeling anxious, you don't say like I have social anxiety, like because you don't like you don't have social anxiety. You are not a feeling. You may be experiencing social anxiety, but you do not identify with it. So like once you like do that, you create this disconnect with the feeling and your identity. And when there's that space, you have more clarity. You're like, oh, that's just a feeling, and it loses power over you. So like, that was a big thing. It's like because all those years, people telling me what I was, it's like fat kid or shy or whatever, that was conditioned in me, and it was like automatic. So I had to like consciously realize that that was in me, and I had to create that separation. So like the first thing you have to do is like realize your tendencies, your habits, and really like analyze them. That's where like self-awareness comes in. You can journal for that and bring out self-awareness, meditation, stuff like that. But like once you realize that, that's when you start like heading or challenging it, challenging these thoughts direct on. So like say if I'm like, oh, I have social anxiety. It's like, okay, wait, no, like, okay, I'm experiencing social anxiety, but that does not mean I have social anxiety. And then you start challenging the belief. You're like, okay, like let's look back at all the times where I showed I was confident. So I asked for that girl's number the other week. I got that. Okay. I mean, would a socially anxious person do that? No.
Mm.
And then you just like kind of you flip the script on it. And over time, you do that enough times, and you start conditioning yourself like, okay, I'm confident, and all that stuff. Um, there's also something to be said about like looking at your achievements or shit like that, and then just like showing appreciation for that as well. Looking at the logical side of things. So if you're emotional about something, look at it logically, kind of like switch off your brain. Like, okay, if I was like, what are the reasons of me thinking this, and why might they not be true? Um, so that was like a big thing. Like, I'm not saying it's easy. Absolutely not. It's very uncomfortable. It takes a lot of work. It took me years of work, but like just reframing is a big thing. So like stop seeing it as discomfort, just see it as a means to grow. Like might be uncomfortable to go again with the gym, might be uncomfortable to lift weights, but over time you get stronger, and then like it's not like the weights get lighter, you just get stronger, if you want a cliche. But yeah, that's the way I would look at it. And yeah, yeah,
You know,
that's my
as,
rant.
as I as I no, it's a great rant. As I
Thank you.
listen to you, one of the things that I think about is like the power of momentum.
Yeah,
And I think this is going to sound like I'm going on a tangent, but I'm going to bring it back, which is
yeah,
so I watch like a lot of NBA, like basketball, and there's this phrase that the commentators always use. They're like, basketball is a game of runs. So you'll see one team will go on like a 15-0 run and they're hitting everything. And then maybe the coach will call a timeout and the opposing team will then go on like a 10-0 run, 12-0 run. And you're like, how can that happen, right? But it's the power of momentum. And I think a lot of the times, and I think what you said was a really good point, which is like, I think sometimes it's so in your head that you're this person, like you're unable to detach from it. And when you just start taking like those small steps, just slowly pushing the the comfort zone, it's like that momentum like builds and builds. And it even goes back to what you were saying before, right? About like compounding, which is like, why would going like maybe going to the gym is now making you more confident in your workplace or in your relationships, and there's all these other benefits because now you're building momentum. You're on like the upward, you have that upward trajectory. And I think sometimes the problem is, and I've done this as well, is like the gap between where you want to go to and where you are just seems so large that like you don't see a way that you could ever get there. And so you just, I think
yeah.
people get like overwhelmed, kind of like they just stand still because they're like, I could never do that. Like they're demoralized.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like with weight loss, man. Like you got to set these, sure, have that big goal, but like set these milestones in between. Like that's exactly like how you build habits, because you get that like dopamine from these small rewards. So you got to like find these ways to along the way. Like, oh, I want to make $1 million. Like, okay, well, start with $1,000 or start with $10. Like making that online, then like push your way up. That's a no. Yeah, you articulated that perfectly.